is the Pegasus Podcast, presented by Night Sports Now. UCF news, views, and a few hot takes. Now, here are your hosts, Bailey Go Knights Adams and Christian Charge On Simmons.
Welcome into episode 243. Be sure you're following us on Twitter at BaileyJAdams22, at ByCASimmons, at Night Sports Now, and at Pegasus Podcast. You can also email us at PegasusPodcast@ksn@gmail.com. Christian, UCF lost, and they will not be going to a bowl game. So right off the bat, I don't even remember what the final score was. I think it was like 31-21. Sounds right? Yeah.
I don't know.
I think that was it. I think it was 31-21.
You said that, and I realized I don't know.
But yeah, that pretty much captures it. I didn't care. And
31-21.
31-21. Cool. They were never really in the game.
They were not at any point in the whole thing.
No.
So,
and this is a team that's now 6-5, but this is not a good team they played. That's like, one of the Big 12 contenders. They just were not in the game against
another team that wants their coach gone.
Yeah,
and this was not even, if you didn't watch the game, which congratulations if you didn't. I skipped the Friendsgiving for this. Which is great for me, but this wasn't even a situation where I don't know how to sit here and pick apart. This didn't work for UCF, that didn't work for UCF. This was one of those games where they just got beat. West Virginia just was better in virtually every aspect. The defense had a really hard time containing Garrett Green. Stop me if that sounds familiar. If you watched the West Virginia game last year, offense just wasn't consistent. It was just West Virginia was just a better team. And when you're in a situation where you're already having a bad season, you go into another team in your conference, which is also having a year not what they want it to be, and then they just beat you like that. The final score does not represent how not close that game. It really just wasn't competitive at any point. It's tough. It's a tough spot to be in. And now what's extra exciting is that UCF will not be going to a bowl game. In so long, you and I did not know each other the last time UCF missed a bowl game. Know if someone had asked me at the time, who's Bailey Adams, I would have been like, sounds like a great guy, but couldn't tell you. That's how long it's been.
I don't think that's what you would have said. It's like, so they went down 14-0 because they couldn't stop the run. Then Dylan Risk fumbled, and then they couldn't stop the run again. So it was 14-0, and they got within 14-7. But again, and like this wasn't necessarily as like comedic of a middle of the game, like middle 8 minutes as it's been in past games. But they did give up a touchdown just before halftime, knowing West Virginia was going to get the ball back out of halftime. And then West Virginia scored again, and they went up 28-7. And at that point, like I knew even at 21-7 at halftime, I was like, this is probably over. But like definitely if they score a touchdown coming out of the break, it's definitely over. And it was. And I don't know. RJ Harvey's great, and I don't really care about talking about anybody else or anything else from this game.
Yeah, RJ's awesome. He tied Kevin Smith's record for most career touchdowns by any UCF player tonight, which is obviously a huge accomplishment. RJ, he 130 yards on 16 carries, 8.1 yards per carry, 2 touchdowns. He's awesome. And I think one of the frustrations from the season that will stick with me in the years to come is how disappointing it is that he had the season he had, one of the most dominant performances by any UCF football player ever. And it was wasted on this listless, lifeless season. And I'm trying to think back, and maybe the older UCF fans can help me out a little bit. I can't recall a UCF season where the preseason expectations were this out of whack with what happened. A good chunk of the fan base felt that this was a roster that could win the Big 12. I think the coaching staff thought this was a roster that could win the Big 12. Even the more moderate people like us who were pulled back a little bit, I was thinking like 8-4, things break your way 9-3 or 10-2. They're staring down at best 5-7, probably and possibly 4-8. I can't think of a time in modern UCF history where there was a season where there was this much hype, and it was not just that they did not meet the hype, it was that it ended up being a terrible, terrible season. I mean, I don't know how to wrap my head around this. First time since 2015. I can't believe how many times this year I've had to get on this podcast and say they did something for the first time since 2015. It's frustrating. And it's frustrating because this was supposed to be some kind of culmination season and everything finally clicks in the Malzahn era, and instead it was just a new low point,
Yeah, and I don't think we have to have the same conversation for the 12th time about, where do they go from here? There's no way to go. Like with Malzahn, there's still like no way to get back up from this and whatever. We don't need to have that conversation again, but it's just like every week feels like a new low. And it's gotten to the point, and we've talked on past podcasts about, watching games and like not really feeling anything anymore. For me, this was even like a new level of that. It was just, I half watched that game even knowing we had a podcast to do to talk about it. And it helped that I think at one point you were like, I don't even really want to talk about the game itself, more so just like, let's talk about mood. And I was like, all right, cool. That means I'd have to watch the game even less in the second half. But
that wasn't really how I meant that text to be taken, but okay, we can roll with that being how you took it.
No, I mean, it's just, I don't know. Like, what can we break down?
Well,
from the game?
my reason I didn't want to break down the game is that the point of when we get on these post-game podcasts and talk about what worked and didn't work is because there are goals UCF is still attempting to achieve, and we talk about how this game informs those goals. The season's over. They have what's going to be an absolutely embarrassing primetime Fox showdown game with Utah, which, oh my God, from what we thought that game was going to be this offseason and what it really is, it's probably going to be a half-empty stadium. I mean, I just don't know what you want me to sit here and tell you about. Because the other thing is, like, let's be real. I think a lot of people are thinking a coaching change is probably on the table here. I'm still a little more skeptical than, most people, but we'll see. But if that happens, none of these guys are going to be back next year anyway. It's like, what's the point of sitting here and being like, yeah, no, I think I wish that they got more pressure on the quarterback. Like, what's the point? There's nothing left to talk about as far as this season. And I think what's frustrating for me, or I don't know if even frustrating is the right word, is to your point about I was just bored within like the first few minutes of this game, and that is so out of character for me. And I think I've said before that I always go over to my parents' house to watch the game. That's like a little tradition. And my mom made the comment because I'm sitting there watching the game, and like I forget, it was the second touchdown West Virginia scored. I'm just like, And my mom goes, I remember how you used to watch UCF games and you're not sitting, you're pacing in front of the TV and you're yelling and you're freaking out every time something happens. You just seem like you don't care. And I was like, well, there's a reason I seem that way. And it's because I don't. It's just, and I don't mean that as some like, I'm angry, so I'm going to stop caring. It's just, you can only see so many bad losses in a row before it's like, you just get numb to them. I feel like, and I know this isn't unique to us. I mean, UCF Twitter is usually so active during the game, either good or bad, people angry or excited, whatever. It was just kind of dead tonight. I think people are over this team, and on a larger point, over this era. I don't know what in the last 4 years fans have really been given to stay bought in on UCF football. And that's a scary, scary place to be in, because whether they beat Utah or lose to Utah, whatever, what has to happen for them to get a sellout crowd for the first home game next season? Is there anything left that can happen this offseason if Malzahn remains the coach where that's going to happen?
I don't think so. Like, I can't imagine. I can't picture anything. And like, to that same point is, but I think it was maybe after, like, as they were even making their first touchdown drive, West Virginia was. I think I ended up tweeting it after the touchdown, but I was working on the tweet. Basically said, it makes me sad that we talk all off season about how excited we are for UCF football to come back around, and it makes me sad that at this point I don't look forward to watching these games. It's more so a box on my Saturday that I unenthusiastically check. It's just, I know that's my plans. Or Saturday, oh yeah, like I can do whatever, and they're like at 3:30 I got to watch the UCF game and we have the podcast. It's like, I don't look forward to watching them play, because other than RJ Harvey, there's really not much to look forward to watching them do. Yep. It's like the same problems over and over again, and the same feeling. It's like every game, scores are different, plays are different, but you kind of just get the same feeling from every game that you watch, and I'm tired of it. And so, yeah, I mean, it's frustrating that we're at that point, and I'm frustrated they lost, frustrated they're not going to a bowl. But once this podcast is over, I'll probably just, I don't know, turn my brain off with this, because like, I don't want to give them much more energy than I have to, because what's the point?
And here's what's really scary is we're saying that we feel this way. You and I feel that way. That it's just, we're numb to it. We don't care that much anymore. The losses don't hurt anymore because there's just no goals left to accomplish. This just is what it is. We're apathetic. We are the diehards of the diehards. We are the people who are like, we want to do a podcast where we talk about this. I'm the guy where I spend hours out of every day of my life fixated on this, focused on this, trying to cover the team, covering games, all like, this is like my whole thing. My whole life is this. And if you're listening to this podcast, you're in that boat too. If you watch that game and are like, I'm here and I want to hear more about this, you're a diehard too. If us and you are feeling that way, that stadium isn't filled with diehard fans. That's not who gets them the 45,000 plus attendance. That's not who gives them big TV numbers, even brings in money. That's the casual fan. So if the diehards who are in this for life feel this way, how do you think the casual fans feel? How do you think the people who are going to play a role in whether that stadium's full and everything else that makes UCF football a fun, exciting brand, how do they feel?
Yeah, it's crazy that it's gotten to this point. And honestly, it feels that, like, I'm trying to look back now, and I guess it's happened gradually, but I think it's the speed at which it is happening, obviously with this season, is speeding up. It's increasing because you look back at the Malzahn era and it's like 2021, we talk about it, it's his best coaching job. They had a million injuries and still, won 9 games, beat Florida. Even still, like the energy throughout that season, and understandably, because it was a kind of a thrown together team with all the injuries, the energy wasn't great that season. And then
people were really mad. The Florida game, the Florida win covered up how frustrated people were for basically the whole season.
Yeah, and then even I remember at a point, I think it was 2022, or maybe it was even last year, which is worse because it was the year they jumped into the Big 12. But I said to you something like, what happened to the bounce house? Like even like games just don't feel like they did. I know, we always go back to the way things felt from 2017 to 2019, but it's just like things.
Yeah, but also like that was a thing my whole childhood. It wasn't like the bounce house started getting good in 2017. Like I have memories from being like 10 and the place was rocking. I mean, the name bounce house developed in 2007 for a reason. It's not like good crowds are a new thing here.
Yeah, and it's like even. And again, I guess it has to largely do with play on the field. But like even the games this year, like there have been good crowds. There have been a lot of people there, but it hasn't felt like that same atmosphere. And it's hard to have that same atmosphere when you immediately go down 7-0 or you immediately turn the ball over. You don't know who the quarterback is. Like random stuff like that, I guess, is going to suck the life out of the building. But it's just like this kind of started happening a little bit as the years went on. And then we're at this point now where we do go into next week expecting it's not going to be 2015 USF level bad, the game to go 0-12 on Thanksgiving. But this is Black Friday, and normally it's a thing to do. UCF's been playing on Black Friday a lot, but this game means nothing. And I think, like you say, like a lot of the casuals, like people who are just like, oh yeah, like let's go to the game, it'll be fun. Maybe they'll still go just to have fun, but I don't know. Like
well, on that point, a couple things you just said is as far as one, it won't be as bad as the USF game for 0-12. We'll see. I mean,
like that was.
I don't think it's going to be an actual dead stadium, but I could see a crowd under 30,000. I mean, the thing you have to understand is this is Thanksgiving weekend. The UCF's always had really good Black Friday crowds because they're playing USF, who's their big rival, or there's something big on the line, or there's stakes, and people want to come back and be part of that. The town's buzzing, there's energy, and there's no like if you don't live in Orlando or you're going to be with family or whatever, there's no motivation to go, well, this team's not going to a bowl. There's nothing left. Is RJ Harvey even going to play? I wouldn't play if I were him. I mean, you're going to the NFL at this point. I mean, we're probably going to see guys like Kobe Hudson might not play. I mean, it's like, why go? I'm not going to fault anyone who decides not to. Oh, really quickly, I just want to say on your other point, when you talk about, we talk about the bounce house and how it had more energy. It's because there were stakes. It's the energy rises with what is occurring. And yeah, the bounce house was the loudest it had ever been when they were trying to go undefeated, when they were trying to go into your 6 bowl. And it's always been a strong atmosphere, and it's been strong in down years, but there's a scaling based on what's on the line. And this is the second straight year for UCF where there's just never at any point been anything on the line. And that wears on people.
Yeah. And so back to the RJ Harvey thing, I the only thing I could think of, so let me go back. I don't remember if we talked about it on the podcast this week, but I had mentioned to you just kind of offhand, I think we were talking, is it when we were playing? I think we were playing college football on PlayStation. And I had said like, oh, I don't know if I want to go to the Utah game just because it's Black Friday. I'll have, family stuff on Thanksgiving. And do I really want to go to that game? And it was because you had mentioned I think after the Arizona State game on the podcast, like it's going to be a bad crowd. And that made me think, well, do I really want to go to that then? Then you brought me back into going by saying RJ Harvey, it's his last home game. Like you're not going to want to miss that. And I was like, you're right. That sucks.
Yep.
Will he play? I don't know. I guess we'll find out as the week goes on. Maybe we won't because Gus won't say anything. But the one reason I could think of, like you mentioned it earlier, he tied Kevin Smith's record for touchdowns. Like I would like for him to play at least a little bit to get that, that touchdown to hold the record. But
and I'm talking wildly. I have no idea if he's going to play or not. I'm just pointing out that I would be surprised if everyone who started the season is playing in that game. Yeah. And if you are RJ Harvey, I would love to see RJ play one more time. Obviously, he's been one of the most fun UCF players ever in the entire 40-plus year history of the program. But there's no way around the fact there's really no benefit to him playing, especially since he has. I think he will play. I'm just saying, as an example of where this season is at, it wouldn't be surprised if you see that. And I'm not going to fault any fans who don't end up going to that game.
Yeah, no, I'm just circling back in my head and thinking like it's his senior day. He's the hometown hero. Like he is so beloved. Like I think he will want one last time, even though there are no other stakes than him just having another great game on that field.
Well, whether he does or not doesn't matter for
UCF
season, because the season is over. And I want to talk about, because I want to keep a couple things in perspective of, if you've listened to this podcast, if this is your first ever episode, listen to this podcast, or you started listening 3 years ago, wherever end of the spectrum you're on, by the way, if this is your first episode, I don't know what the hell is going on in your life where you're like, this is the time for me to jump on. But that I, and you too, I assume, Bailey, I don't assume, I know for a fact because we talk about it, are of the opinion this era needs to be over, that it's time for a new coach. And I want to keep in perspective of, this season has been bad. I understand it has not been a bottom falling out train wreck. I know we've seen coaches get fired because a team that's supposed to be good goes like 1-11 or something. I get they won a couple games here and there. Although, let's be real, they won 2 real games. Are we really hyping up New Hampshire, Sam Houston? But I just want to take a second and let's look at this era and where it was, what UCF was when Gus Malzahn took over UCF and what UCF is now. When Gus Malzahn took over UCF in spring of 2021, it was a team that was a year removed from just having had 3 straight top 25 seasons. They had a Heisman caliber quarterback in Dylan Gabriel and far more talent than the vast majority of the conference they were in. They were beating Power 5 teams regularly. That was a thing they were known for. No one wants to schedule UCF. You and me, that fall of 2021, we're going to Louisville and all the fans are joking with us of, oh God, you're just going to kick our asses. This is going to suck. Can you imagine that happening now with UCF going into any power conference stadium? And UCF just had this huge and vibrant fan base. And Gus came in and said, we're going to recruit like crazy. We're going to win a national championship. We're going to do all these things. And now you fast forward 4 years from all that. UCF's 28-23 in his tenure. They went from having a Heisman caliber quarterback to the quarterback room being a disaster. They're the only team in the country that's played 4 quarterbacks this year. That's been an unmitigated nightmare virtually every year that Gus has been the coach here, from his first season where they're running Joey Gatewood out there for no reason, to the whole John Rice Plumlee Mikey thing, to just whatever this year has been. UCF in his tenure is 7-16 versus P4 teams that they used to be afraid to schedule UCF, and now UCF is just seen as another G5 opponent who comes into their stadium even while they're in the Big 12. We're seeing bad stadium atmospheres at the Bounce House now. Fan interest is waning. There's a horrible crowd coming. And the one big thing he achieved was UCF started recruiting like they have never before. They blew out of the water everything that they've done recruiting-wise. And 2 things happened from that. 1, most of the guys never played here. And 2, it's done. The current recruiting class is in the 60s. So it's just, I understand that, there's a sense of the bottom hasn't completely fallen out yet, but when you look at where UCF was when he took it over and what it is now, the program has eroded in every single facet. And where do you think, the bottom hasn't fallen out yet. What do you think next year's going to be? If he's
the bottom falling out.
The bottom falling out.
Them going like 2-10.
Yeah.
And so like the thing is, his big accomplishments, like you said, the recruiting, and now that's fallen apart. The other one was that big Gasparilla Bowl win against Florida. And we talked about it earlier this season. Basically undid the best part of his on-field legacy this year when they went to the Swamp and didn't really look competitive.
Yep.
So it's, what does he have? When you look at it, when you're looking back at it, what does he have? That surprise win over Oklahoma State last year? Great memory. One of my favorite games I've been to in a while. But other than that, it's like I can't really point at anything I've really enjoyed about this era. It's other than RJ Harvey, and that's not really a Gus thing. That's just he lucked into having one of the best running backs in school history.
Yeah, and that's the issue. Is just, I mean, it's funny on the surface. He's lost more games every single year as head coach. Lost 4 in his first year, 5 in his second, 7 last year. Now at 7 this year. Good shot that 8 is coming. And I want to be understanding, because I wasn't off the Gus bus last year when a lot of people were, because the big caveat is in the middle of all of this, they didn't move to the Power 4. And yes, I don't believe that UCF would have been missing a bowl this year if they were still playing in the AAC. They obviously would have had a very different roster, a whole different reality, whatever. But there's just this sense of that made more sense to me as an excuse when all the other teams who moved up weren't having success. And I understand that SMU has an insane amount of money, and I understand BYU does as well. And I think that has helped accelerate their growth. But Cincinnati went from being very bad last year and not making a bowl to being competitive this year. Even Houston fired their coach, brought in his Willie Fritz, his name out of my head for a second. They've actually been a bit competitive this year. They're not going to have a good record or anything. They're probably going to lose tonight, but they've at least gotten better. Every other team of the 5 G5s that have moved to P4, you see a roadmap to why they're improving, why they're getting better. You see it's the only one moving in the wrong direction. And I was able to forgive last year because I kind of figured that's about what it was going to be. They had the best season of the newcomers, and they had this great recruiting class coming in. You saw the roadmap. When you look at the season now, and they're declining on the field, they're declining in recruiting, they're declining in fan support, they're declining in donations and boosters and all of that. There's no semblance of an argument to say things are just going to magically get better next year because the fans are done. And I don't know what else there is to say at this point, but then just hope that Gus walks away. I don't know. I mean, I'm trying, guys, because I still think there's a solid chance that he says, you owe me a lot of money and I'm going to collect on that and I'll be back next year. But man, I don't know how to sell this anymore. I don't know how to sell the concept of the Gus era continuing.
I don't either, and I think we've said that every week for maybe 3 or 4.
I'm sorry to repeat myself. I don't know what new information there is to say at this point to glean. If it's just you hope it ends soon.
Yeah, and so I'm trying to see. I haven't watched Gus Malzahn's press conference, but I'm very curious how beaten down he looked this time. I mean, a lot of it's just audio that I can't play right now because I don't know how it's going to sound. But yeah, I imagine when you think, and it kind of popped into my head when you said that earlier, how he came in on his first day and was like, we're going to recruit, like our hair's on fire. We're going to recruit Orlando and we'll play anybody in the parking lot, all this stuff. And he's so energetic and energized by the opportunity to coach at UCF. And, the right guy gets here, it's going to be a monster. He's since then pretty much, he's eroded all of what had been built in the previous few years. He has run the program into the ground. And when you look at him talk now in his press conferences, he looks and sounds like he knows that's the case. Like he knows it's completely, I would like for somebody to do like his energy and like attitude from that first press conference or even the early days to what he is now, because every time he walks into that room now, he just seems defeated. Like he just looks like he is exhausted by all of this. So yeah, I know like he could say, you owe me a lot of money and I'm going to stay and I want to keep coaching because I'm a football coach. But at this point, like he looks defeated and he looks like he knows this is a disaster. And I don't know, maybe he can somehow talk himself into a way of thinking he can fix it next year, but I don't know what that would be. I don't know.
I'm literally trying to figure it out in my head. And I'm just saying, okay, well, you can keep Risk. And although Risk had one bad throw and Gus just attacked him on the sideline tonight, was screaming at him after the end of the first drive. So that definitely a good sign. I mean, I don't think it's a secret to anyone that Gus obviously never wanted Risk to be the guy. He wouldn't have made him the fourth string quarterback if he thought he should be out there. And let's not act like we think that, I don't know. And I'm not mad at Risk or anything after this game. I thought he played fine. It's the thing that I was trying to get fans to understand that we talked about on past podcasts was he's young, he's inexperienced. He wasn't just going to go out there and ball out every night. There were going to be games like this. And again, this wasn't John Rice Plumlee and KJ Jefferson and even Timmy McClain had games far worse than anything we've seen from Risk through 3 games. But I've also found myself just waning in the confidence that he'll even be the guy next year if Gus comes back, because I think that Gus is just going to recruit over him like he's always done. And but I guess I'm just telling myself, okay, so what? Maybe Risk comes back and he's the starter and you pair him with, I don't know, Javon Boggs announced he's staying committed to UCF. Does he pop off as a true freshman? I mean, I just don't. You'd have to rebuild. I mean, you would have to treat next year, whether it's a new coach or Gus, as a complete and total rebuild. The issue is that getting the money for that, getting the fan buy-in for that is a lot more doable when it's the start of a new era and not a coach who's just kind of failed over and over again for 4 years saying, well, let me try again. And can I tell you right now where I believe the Malzahn era ended? Yeah. I think it ended when he decided to get rid of Addison and Hinshaw after 2023. Because there was a roadmap that I was seeing. I know I'm repeating myself, guys. I feel like I've said roadmap 1 billion goddamn times over the last few episodes, but it's like, what do you want me to do? They're still losing. And can you tell how angry I am? They've missed a bowl, by the way. I'm just in such a bad mood about this. But I was defending everything that happened in that 2023 season because they did it. They made a bowl. That was the goal. They're recruiting really well. And I thought that was what was supposed to happen. We had many preseason podcasts saying that's probably what's going to happen. Everything's fine. Then Gus blows everything up and is firing coaches and demoting coaches and bringing new coordinators and Ted Roof, who was crazy. And he goes, I'm taking back play calling because I'm the one who needs to be doing this. This is what I'm good at. And talking about how he has a press conference where he says 2023 was an unacceptable season. We can never have a season like that again. And for him to take them off of their trajectory and off of their plan and rip everything up and recruit through the portal over freshmen they brought in and say, this didn't work. We've got to do all this. And for that to result in a worse season than the season he labeled unacceptable, that to me was the moment where everything just went completely off the rails. I don't know if this is the same season if they had trusted the plan. If Gus had not taken back the offense, if Addison had stayed the DC, I don't think it's worlds better. I don't think they're 10-2 or anything like that, but I also don't know if they're this, where we watched a bunch of players who they brought in through the portal who aren't going to be back next year hang out on the field while they just failed for, game after game after game.
Yeah, I think, and kind of going back to what you said about, like, we don't even know if Dylan Risk is going to be the guy next year and you're confident. I think the most likely, I don't even want to say most likely, because the portal changes everything. The portal, anyone can jump into the portal at any moment. I think it's more likely, assuming he stays, that it is just EJ next year. And that's maybe that's the one glimmer of hope, or one glimmer of, hey, yeah, we're going to rebuild. We're going to have a redshirt freshman quarterback and a young team. And you set the expectations. I'm not saying like you go out there like, oh, we're just going to try to go 6-6 this year. But the thing with Gus has always been too is like talking it up so much and setting up these expectations where everyone's like, oh, we've got this great roster, like we might compete for a conference title, and then you get this. It's like, the patience has already run out, so it's going to be tough to ask the fan base, all right, like, and not even him saying it, but like even if us or whoever is saying like, well, yeah, next year's going to be a rebuild because they're going to have a younger team. Nobody wants to hear that now because they just want to do a rebuild with another coach. But
yeah. I don't know how you sell fans on let's rebuild with Gus. I don't know how you sell
year 5. Rebuilding in year 5 with Gus and not having the same money that you had in the portal. And again, like I don't even care if they recruit the portal that much. Like I would rather them almost not recruit the portal that much this offseason, obviously assuming if he's going to stay. Because I want to see these young guys play, and next year's probably going to suck anyway. If you're going to go into a rebuild, whatever. I'd rather rebuild with younger players than guys you're just pulling in from wherever and just hoping it sticks.
You know what the easiest path would be for UCF being unexpectedly competitive next year?
Getting him out of here.
Gus moves on. You hire a G5 coach who has a successful team. His players follow him to UCF through the portal, and you have instant success. That's why Indiana's 10-1. We're seeing that over and over again in college football now. And yeah, that sucks for the G5s, but guess what? UCF's not one of them anymore. We're going to take advantage of the system and its advantages. And I do want to say, because you talk about EJ Colson staying, I don't think EJ Colson's back next year. If you look at the season and we don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but if you just look at the season from EJ Colson's perspective, okay, you're like 17 and probably shouldn't be in college. And Gus sits you down, and I'm imagining the conversation. He goes, EJ, I've got big news. That quarterback we paid $400,000 or whatever it was, we're getting him out of here. We want you, even though your promise still 6 months away. So we're going to put you out there. Congratulations on earning this. You're probably like, that's great. This is everything I've dreamed of since I was a young kid starting at a power program. This is great. You get out there and you make one key mistake. Johnny Richardson fumbles. And for some reason, that's your fault. So you're gone now. And if you're EJ, and then even after then, Jakari isn't good either. They're not like, all right, EJ, get back out there. They're like, let's try Risk. If you're EJ, what's the motivation for saying, yeah, I really want to stick with this staff? I think they've handled my development really well through a season.
They haven't at all. And the only thing, I don't know. I can't put myself in his shoes because I'm old and not a good quarterback and not athletic. But it's more one of those things where if he looks around the room coming back next year, you could easily tell yourself, I'm going to win the job because, one, Jakari Brown, I've seen him play, and he did not take the job when he had the chance. Two, Dylan is not Gus's kind of quarterback, and Gus just yelled at him after 2 incomplete passes on the first drive in his 3rd career start, and he has no real loyalty to him. And then I'm the guy he recruited. That's the only way you can tell yourself, like, I'm going to be the best one in this room. But then knowing that, you also can say Gus might actually go out and recruit over me and bring in a senior who may or may not be good. And
that's what I was about to say was you're forgetting the key element of that. Gus is never going to not bring in a portal quarterback. He's done it every year. He's
Gus's phone. Someone needs to take his phone away and say, I'll give it back to you when the portal closes. Just give him back when the portal closes.
Yeah, it's whatever portal choices are made if Gus is still the coach this offseason, I'm sure will be baffling and shocking in many ways. And the best part is we're not going to know. Like last offseason, they did all this. We thought it was good. But again, like my excuse for that is I am not being paid $5.5 million per year by UCF to know if it's good or not. So it's okay for me to buy it on the hype. And I don't know. You look at the teams that are having success in this year in college football, and what it's not all across the board, but what a lot of them are doing is they are recruiting high school very, very well at a high level. They're playing those guys, and they are supplementing their needs through the portal. What UCF has done every offseason Gus has been here has been we are going to try to grab every good player we can out of the portal and try to find as many starters as we can. And then to everyone's shock every season for some reason, because we're all dumb, it doesn't work because it's a bunch of guys who have never played together, who often don't have a lot of tape, who maybe just had like 4 good games and padded their stats and we're now convinced they're going to be amazing here. And it doesn't come together versus guys that were developed and went through the staff's program. And what I'm realizing, and that I know other people have talked about for some time, and I've tried to stay away from this take because it's just harder to make tangible or to really say is true, but it's pretty clear the staff just isn't good at developing players at a number of positions. I mean, we're not seeing it happen. We've seen very few young guys come in and take the leap. The big time contributors of the Gus era have all been ready-made transfers from other places. It's been RJ Harvey and Ricky Barber and Kobe Hudson and Javon Baker and Lee Hunter. It's never been guys that they brought in from high school who were raw prospects and built them up into being these great players.
And that's the problem. Like that, because as we've seen, you can only get so far with that. You're not going to hit on every transfer you bring in, and they haven't hit on every transfer you bring in. That's why when you look at the other receivers they've brought in, outside of, I guess, Jacoby Jones, who's done pretty well, here and there later on this season, but they can't recruit wide receivers other than, they got Kobe, they got Javon, great. But other than that, nothing. And then you kind of look at other positions, like who did they bring in? They got 2 defensive linemen, great, but they haven't brought in really any edge rushers or any linebackers or anything that have been extreme hits. I mean, they brought in Ethan Barr. He ended up being a captain, and I think he's more often than not, probably every snap, the worst linebacker on the field. Like X3 Alexander, I think, has promise, but you don't know if he's going to be back next year because he could just hop in the portal if he wanted to. It's crazy. You put this entire roster together and say, we've got all these guys who've played a lot of football. That was his favorite line. They've played a lot of football, and we're going to make a run at the title, and you're 4-7. And the quarterback you came into the season with, you benched him for, like you said, lesser than what John Rice Plumlee did in 2 years. And you decided at that point, we're blowing everything up. Oh, man, in hindsight, when you look at that actually is kind of crazy. Yeah. They were 3-2 and 1-1 in the Big 12.
Yeah.
3-2, 1-1 in the Big 12. And that's when they decided to go play quarterback roulette. And now they're 4-7.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question about this great topic we're on, because this has just been so fun. My blood pressure this can't be healthy.
Yeah, no, we need to end this soon. I'm tired of it.
But now let me do this instead. Let me ask you this question. Who are the star players on this roster? Gus has been here for 4 years, full cycle. Who are the star players on this roster that this staff recruited from high school?
I'm stalling. Randy Pittman?
Yeah, Randy Pittman. Who else?
Let's see. John Walker, who hasn't played all year.
John Walker. Okay, John Walker, who we saw as a true freshman, so we can't speak to his development because we've only ever seen him as a true freshman. We're still just at Randy Pittman. Who else? Year 4. Who else?
They didn't bring in Brandon Adams, did they?
No, they did not.
No. See, then that's probably it. I think that's
you can
it.
Maybe do Braden Marshall, who's been fine and hasn't even been one of the best players on defense. So somehow we were in year 4 of a coaching staff, and we have been able to soundly identify one player who they recruited out of high school who was one of the best players on the team. Everyone else is either somehow still a hypo holdover, like RJ Harvey, or transfers that they brought in from other schools, and that's the program. And we wonder why there's an identity issue. I mean, there's no development in this program.
I'm in a bad mood now. Like, we got on the podcast, I was like, I don't really care, whatever. Who cares? Season's almost over, thankfully. And then now I'm just mad, and I'm not happy.
Well, I'm
mad and I'm not happy.
Can we end on a positive note?
The gold face masks.
The gold face mask. And if you're about to roll your eyes, or maybe you are actively rolling your eyes, I have big news for you, listener. And that news is that it's my podcast, and we can talk about whatever I want. And I want to talk about you guys can leave. It's fine. 34 minutes. We did it. Get out if you want to hear about this. I'm frustrated because this year for uniforms has been so freaking good for UCF. They have worn so much cool stuff, especially not even the second half of the season. I know fans were mad about the whole lack of gold for a while, but even before that, what they wore for New Hampshire, the blackout with the white face mask and the white script knights, coolest blackout in history. And now that they've added a freaking gold face mask, and this isn't even like a yellow face mask or a gold face mask. It looks like it is made of gold bars. This is, and it's not even chrome. It is like the coolest looking gold face mask ever. And they just dropped that out of nowhere and helped take black, white, black, which I've always liked as a combo, and elevate it in ways I never could have imagined. And I can't even enjoy the damn uniforms because if I tweet about them, you all get mad at me because I'll tweet, hey, the gold face masks look good. And you'll reply to
do it anyway.
And you'll just be like, Dylan Risk sucks. And I'm like, oh, did the face mask make him play bad? I can't talk about the face mask. So even that's bad now.
Yeah.
But
I don't know.
There was
just happened with the internet.
We had an internet issue and we decided
to
to both just pause and wait for the other to talk. And then I think we just stared at each other for a little bit, but we got through it.
See, we didn't though, because I only stared at you for like a second before I said
anything. I stared
so
at you for some time.
You were just staring at me, for whenever until my internet decided.
Me personally, I assumed that you were thinking about the gold face masks and just lost in thought over how good they look.
I mean, they look
internet
great.
issues also make sense.
Very excited about it, but I don't know. It's just I was telling you, just tweet about them anyway, and I don't care if anyone replies negative things to you, just block them.
Yeah.
Block our listeners.
Guys, I'm close. I'm close to if you're mean to me in my mentions when I tweet about the uniforms, I think I'm just going to start blocking you. And I'm sure that that's a serious threat that you'll take very seriously because I can only imagine how important it is for you all to be able to see my tweets. But
you'll still be able to see them now with the new rule.
Oh God, that's right. Blocking doesn't even do anything anymore. Oh, it's stupid.
All it does is whatever.
We'll see what happens with Gus. Final note, as we've said a million times, there's a crazy buyout here. If he's going to leave, it's got to be his decision. I don't think UCF can tell him to go. So we will wait and see what happens. And if he is back next year, we will have what I'm sure will be an excellent offseason of podcast for you, where we will have no choice but to rationalize and blind ourselves into thinking there's hope. So stay tuned for that.
Absolutely brutal. Yeah. Anyway, have a great Thanksgiving, everyone. Oh, we'll talk to you before then. I forgot.
I was going to say, we're going to talk to them in like 3 days.
To me, I feel like tomorrow is Thanksgiving at this point. I don't know. Anyway, I stand by that. I'll say it again in our next podcast, but hope everyone enjoys, this week and, the rest of this weekend. Good news is you're done watching UCF for the weekend. So you can enjoy your Sunday unless you have an NFL team that is also making you hate your life. But yeah, cool. We'll be back early next week to talk about whatever else we can. I don't know. Maybe we'll talk Thanksgiving. It might be fun. Until then, you can find us on Twitter at BaileyJAdams22, at @ByCA Simmons, at Night Sports Now, and at Pegasus Podcast. Thank you guys so much for being with us, and we'll talk to you soon.
Bye, everybody.